Okay, guys. So this is going to be part 2 of our little conversation here about my brother's wife, narcissistic wife. So now we're on the second time that we met her. She comes to my house, and it was just such a very vast difference between the first time and the second time. You know, the first time she was very quiet. She didn't really talk too much to us. She didn't really, she didn't really tell us much about herself or anything like that. In fact, that first time she kind of talked through my brother, but really wasn't talking to us, didn't ask any questions. And so now here we are at the second time we're meeting her, Everything was about her. A lot of the normal things that you talk about when you first meet somebody for the first time, like where you go to school and where you work and, where you grew up and your family and those kind of things. To me, those are the kinds of things that you talk about when you're first getting to know somebody. And she didn't really talk about any of those things. They were the things that she talked about was, how many cars she owned, and she had a Mercedes and a BMW and an Audi, and she owned a boat and a Mustangs, and she bought her ex-boyfriend a Mustang, and her and her ex-husband lived in these huge houses, and he was loaded, and everything was very materialistic. It was like, she was talking at us, not to us, and she definitely did not make any she definitely didn't ask any questions about us, nothing. I mean, just no interest in us whatsoever. At the time, my husband and I had just, moved into, we were in our house for a little while at that point in time, but we just didn't have the money, so we kind of fixed it up, and made do. We're big DIYers in our house, we made do with what we had. And so a lot of our, decor was kind of DIY, Our kitchen was kind of funky. We had a lot of old antiques around. We had a soda machine from the 1970s, a huge Coke machine in the middle of our kitchen, and I do vinyl graphics, so I had had a giant, Chevrolet Bel Air, 1950 Chevrolet Bel Air, or whatever it is, on the wall and stuff like that. And when people, the whole point here is that when people used to come into our house, they used to be like, wow, what a, cool house, and oh, how'd you do that, and this and that. And she just had there was not even one comment on the house, which was very weird, because everybody that came into our house was like, wow, where'd you get the soda machine? Or just at least one of the things, she had no interest in any of that. So, and didn't ask us personal questions about ourselves, like where we work or what we do or anything like that. So it was just a lot of her talking about herself, talking about things that she owned. I was trying to kind of relate to her, and I noticed that she just didn't listen to anything that, I had to say. Everything was really about her. And, the few times that she actually did respond to something that I said, it was kind of like a one-upper kind of thing. I was trying to relate with her on a girl level, talking about, makeup, and my husband was saying something to the effect that, I own so much makeup, it's ridiculous. And she's like, I own the whole entire collection for MAC, and I don't even wear makeup. My friend's a makeup artist. Her friend, she has a million friends everywhere, whatever. Or we were talking about shopping. And I said, I'm a cheap shopper, and I really don't like to spend that much money on stuff. And I said, the most I've ever spent on a dress was $300, which was way out of my price range for my engagement party. And I said, it was a designer BCBG dress. And she's like, oh, I have 30 of those in my closet. Just everything I said, she had to kind of one-up me. And she was just talking, and there was no, interest in anybody else. It was really, going on and on about, just really material things. Everything was about some, what she owned and what she had, and, how much her friends worship her, and they all come over, because she curls their hair and she does it so good, and, she's great at everything. She's got all these certifications and license, it was grandiose. A lot of bragging, So I kind of checked out halfway through the night. Like, not that I, made it obvious, but I was kind of like, all right, I had enough of trying to converse with this girl. She's kind of not really interested in anything I have to say. So I kind of just focused on listening, and my husband was kind of feeding into the whole, her bragging, and, she would talk to the person who was showing the most interest in what she had to say. And I guess it was him at that point, and he's, he was asking her questions and stuff, and I mean, she just loved talking about herself. So, and the other thing that bothered me that night, so what I learned about her that night was that she was very materialistic, very, self-absorbed, absorbed. She was, had, basically, some very expensive taste. She made good money, whatever. Her ex-husband had good money, those are the kinds of things that we learned. The other thing that bothered me that night, and this really bothered me, it was the fact that my brother was just so quiet that night, just so not himself, He gave me this, vibe that, it's hard to explain. Like, he was uncomfortable around her, not the same way he used to act with his ex. With his ex, he acted normal, very comfortable, even, right off the bat, when she first came around. It was like, they had known each other for their whole lives, He was funny and talkative, and, he just kind of took the back seat this night with her, and kind of just, she did all the talking, and he was just kind of back, in the background, like a piece of furniture. So that kind of bothered me, because I could just see that, he just was uncomfortable and kind of nervous. And I was like, they had been hanging out for a little over a month at this point in time. So you would think that, and when I say hanging out, I'm talking if they weren't at work, they were with each other. She did play a little games with him here and there. She would tell him that, she wasn't interested in a, serious relationship, but then she would be, basically what she was saying and what she was doing were two different things. So that was something that was a little strange. But you would think by then he would have had a little bit more comfort for the amount of time that they were spending together, but not so much. The other thing that, let me finish this part off. So, my husband, and I'll never forget this, my husband closed the door that night when they left, and I felt like, oh my God. To this day, anytime I've been around her, I get this same feeling where it's just like, when she, leaves, you're like, oh. Like, she talks so much, and it's very fast, and it's very like that's the rhythm of it, and it's just like constant, she doesn't stop. She doesn't. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in, and when she leaves, you feel like, oh my God, shit. You feel like you were just brain fucked really hard. So when she left that night, I will never forget this. My husband closed the door. And he was like, you don't like her, do you? And I was like, nope. Nope, I don't. I didn't really see her and her attitude and the way she was. I didn't see her being around for the long haul, because the chemistry between her and my brother. Now, if you knew my brother and his ex, I mean, their chemistry was just unbelievable. But between him and her, I don't know, there just was no chemistry there. There was something that was missing, And so I really didn't think she was going to be around for the long haul. So I want to talk about a couple of things before I go on with the story here. There was a couple of red flags that kind of came up very early on. And my brother even kind of caught on to some of them, but he didn't, he talked himself out of them. I don't know. It's, and that's the thing with these people. It's so hard because, as human beings, and they always go after, decent human beings. They don't go after, other narcissists. They go after people who are, giving and caring and loving and want to trust people. And that's the whole thing. You put your trust, and you don't want to believe that this person who, what they're presenting to you is, just so, almost too good to be true, and you don't want to believe that it's not, and you might see these little things here and there that are off, but because of all the love that they're showing you and admiration, you kind of, you talk yourself out of those things. And I think my brother did that, and these things, again, I'm on the outside and I'm not the one being love bombed. So I'm watching this and I'm like, oh my God, there's a couple things that are a little, concerning for me. One of them was that she kept telling him, and I remember he called me up one day to talk about this, because this was one of the things that he definitely picked up on. She kept telling him that she had a friend, at her gym that knew my brother, that was a good friend to him. And, my brother's kind of like a loner. He doesn't have that many good friends. And the ones that he does have, he knew that what gyms they went to and whatever. And the people at that point in time that he was really close with in his life, they didn't know him for that long, They were friends he met through work, and those were the people that he was going out with. So they only knew him in his relationship with his ex. They didn't know him because he met his ex through these people. And so they didn't know him, besides that. And so there was information that she was presenting to him that this person was supposedly, telling her and saying, just random things you fall in love really fast, or it was a lot of looking back now, I think it was a lot of projection. It was a lot of things that she did, and she was kind of shit testing him to see if, these things were true, so she would bring up, I don't remember specifics, but I do remember that one. But there was, she would kind of bring up these things, I think, to gauge where he was at, relationship wise, and how he treated women. And so my brother, I remember him calling me up one night and saying, she says she's talking to this person, but the stuff that's supposedly coming from this person, it just doesn't make sense. And he's like, I can't figure out who it is, and she won't tell me who it is. And he's like, it's just weird. And I thought it was pretty weird too, and at that point, I didn't want to put her down or judge her or be negative about it, and I just listened to him, and I gave an opinion that it was weird, a little strange, but I thought it was really strange, I thought it was a little concerning. I was like, why would you tell somebody these things? And I don't think there was ever a friend. I think it was her doing her own research online and, stalking him almost. Because I do remember that one day he called me up and he goes, she knew I had a DWI. Mind you, I've had a DWI myself too. It's common around, that age. We were in our, 20s. I got mine when I was 23, way over 10 years ago. And he got his a little bit later, but, it's a very common thing. You're out, you could be out to dinner, cops around here are cracking down. And she knew about that, and that was kind of weird. It was like, would you run his name? She works as an insurance sales agent, so she sells auto insurance, home insurance, any type of insurance. And so, I was like, oh, what'd she do? Go run his name through the computer, the DMV computer? I don't know. That's just kind of strange to me. And I'm not saying, I think this day and age, that's something people do is they kind of, do a little internet Google search on people that they're dating. But, I think that's a little further. So, that was something that bothered me. The other thing that bothered me was, she was kind of playing this push-pull game with him where she would, hang out with him for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden she would be like, I need space, I'm not looking for a relationship. And then, and he would tell me, I remember him picking up on this as well and saying, she's telling me that she doesn't want a serious relationship, and she kind of pushes me away sometimes, but she's texting me, she texts me as soon as she gets up in the morning, and then all day at work, and then all day, after work, and then I come straight to her house, and I'm like, this was weeks in, from them meeting one another, and I thought that was a little, weird and unhealthy. I'm like, why, you shouldn't be on top of each other that much at this stage in the game. Well, really ever, because that's just weird. But, that was definitely a little troublesome, because, from his perspective, it was like, oh, she cares about me. She's texting me all day, you know? But from my perspective, it was a little concerning. There came a point where my brother would call me up and he would want to hang out with me, and his personality was just changing. You know, he was just, it was really bizarre. It was like we would, you know, he would hang out with me, but the whole time we were together, he would kind of be like entranced into his phone and like texting her the whole time, and I'd be trying to talk to him and he's like giggling to himself and just very weird behavior. And I almost didn't want to hang out with him because he was acting strange, you know, when I was with him. And I remember there was a point in time where I kind of, you know, blew him off or whatever, just told him I was busy. It wasn't being